And there's no going back. After you've made a mistake, it's done and dusted, and you can't fix what has happened. But you can move on. You can find a new path, a new direction, and look for a new opportunity. There's no point in dwelling and crying about the lost cause or the mistake that you've made. So finding your feet after failure is after you've made that mistake. How do we get up? How do we get on? How do we move on to a greater place, to a better opportunity? So today I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Ian Hatton. He's here to share his journey on finding his feet after failure. Ian, also known as Morpheus, moves influences to lead and live consciously and authentically to create their unique legacy. He's a conscious leadership expert, international keynote speaker, and the author of Lead Like Morpheus, the genius of conscious leadership. So guys, get ready to be inspired, challenged, and empowered to embrace failure as a vital part of the journey toward personal and professional fulfillment. Welcome, Ian. We are honored to have you here today.
Great to be with you, Lois. This is a fun topic, one of my favorites.
Great. And before we start, who or what is Morpheus?
So it's a name given to me by my friends who we were sort of playing around with the idea of what are our mythical or mystical names? Who are we? You know, maybe a character from history or television or a movie or a book or something like that. And I said, oh, I don't know. I've been thinking about it and I really don't know. And they all turned to me and said, but you're Morpheus. It's so obvious that you're Morpheus. You're the one who awakens dreams. You are the one who believes when others have stopped believing. You are the one who isn't the hero, but raises up the hero and this kind of thing. So apparently I'm Morpheus. I responded initially by saying, oh, I wish I was Morpheus. I'd love to be Morpheus. I could never be Morpheus. And then they said, no, you are Morpheus. And so I took it on board.
Great. Well, it's such an interesting name, and it certainly gets people's interest piqued.
Well, you know, it's also found in the word metamorphosis. It's to change, it's to grow or to transform, actually. And that is really my game, is I'm all about transforming.
And I know you've transformed yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Ian, share with us one small little mistake that you've made in your life. Nothing too significant.
Well, the one I want to share that keeps coming up every time I think about this is actually quite big, but it's a long time ago. It's 25 years ago. I mean, it's big in the sense that it was very embarrassing. And the story was that when I was about to join Microsoft, I had been in my interview process. They talked about, this team of people I'm going to join and how I will be the one who will, lead them because I'm so much better than them. And they gave me all of this sort of language. And the one day after I'd accepted the job offer, I was on one of the airport buses, where you're at the airport and you're now going out to the aeroplane. And I got a phone call from somebody and they were asking me about my new role. And I explained this and I said, and I'm coming in because the guys who are apparently doing it at the moment, they're not going to be able to hack it and this kind of thing. And I finished the phone call and turned around and two of them were standing right behind me on the same bus. So incredibly embarrassing, incredibly arrogant on my part to even be talking like that. But it was a big lesson for me that day, not to not get caught, but to actually check my heart about what I'm saying.
So it was a lesson learned. And did you say anything to them? How did you overcome that embarrassment?
I think initially I just pretended it didn't happen. I just started talking to them.
And did it ever come back? Did they ever speak to you about it later?
No, I think they got to know me and they realized that I wasn't quite that arrogant and actually we got to work together very well and it wasn't a problem in the end, but it was just very embarrassing at the time.
Yes, we all do that. We've all got those little embarrassing stories, and I don't think mine is good enough, or it's savory enough to share. It's unsavory, and I can't share it on live YouTube.
Uh,
Ian, you've made a statement. Your number one job is you.
mm.
What does that mean?
So for me, it's one of the foundation tenets of the whole idea of conscious leadership, is that conscious leadership starts with self. It starts with leading self. And I think I can talk about this with confidence because I didn't always practice that. But the whole idea is that um, what we learn about ourselves and leading and influencing ourselves actually creates for us the blueprint, if you like, for leading others. So, for example, one of the great things that we do in good leadership is we practice emotional intelligence. Well, how do we practice emotional intelligence towards others if we don't first practice it with ourselves? Understanding our own emotions, tuning into those emotions, knowing how to manage them, doing a breathing exercise or something like that, that can actually then create the capacity to then bring to others and to influence others and to hear them, make them feel heard, and so on, and accepting their humanness. So for me, it's absolutely fundamental that as a conscious leader, we are very conscious of ourselves first, and then we then become conscious of our people, our clients, our customers, the bottom line, all the other things flow from it.
I love that you said leading self. You know, we all speak about knowing self. Who am I? What are my values? What do I believe in? And that's absolutely imperative because you can't lead yourself until you know yourself. But I love the fact leading self. It's an unusual concept, and I think it's very valuable. Right, finding your feet after failure. Share your story.
So this story actually goes all the way back to when I left Microsoft and left the whole IT world in 2002. And there was a good reason why I did it. I had this sense that I was going to kind of change the world with, I discovered something called authentic leadership, which is kind of a precursor to conscious leadership. And I completed a master's degree in organizational leadership and of course took all my corporate experience. And I thought, well, here it is. I'm going to go and change the world. We all know when we make those dramatic statements that there's going to come some trouble, isn't there? And and I started my own business. In fact, I started two different businesses over time, and all along I was avoiding the issue of self leadership. And one of the reasons I'd been avoiding it is that I sort of thought in my head, which in hindsight I don't know why I thought it, that because I had poor self control, in my opinion, I could never be a self leader, and therefore I should just ignore self leadership and focus on leading others. And what happened was that the business sort of went back and forth. It never really took off the way we would have liked it to. And by 2011, I reached this point where I realized I had to leave the business. And I had what I think of as a triple failure at that point. The first failure being that I'd failed to get this business to work, and I decided to hand it over to my business partner, who had come on board a little bit after I'd founded it, and that I needed to withdraw. But I had this incredible sense of failure. I was burnt out. I was really struggling. Coincidentally, at the same time, my wife came to me and said she wants out of the marriage. She doesn't want to be married and she wants out of the marriage. And then I had been involved in a particular sort of spiritual community for, I think, about 15 more years. And I realized I had to leave that too. And this sort of triple whammy, it all happened in the space of about 2 or 3 months that I had this sense of failure, sort of spiritually, marriage wise, and business wise. And I kind of ended up in sort of a zombie state. I sort of found myself just sort of putting one foot in front of the other, but not really being alive, really being numb. I think numb is the best word I can use, burnt out. And and found myself really, really struggling for probably 6 months initially, and then another year of and I call those initial 6 months my ICU, my intensive care unit time, and then the following year I call my rehabilitation, where I started doing a little bit more and starting to find my feet. But the transition for me actually comes back to what I said a little while ago, what you asked me about. And this is my number one job today is me. What happened is I had sort of some conditioning in my life where, for example, just from my parents, the era that they grew up in, you're not supposed to love yourself. You don't love yourself too much. Just be nice. This kind of thing, messaging was happening a lot in my life. And one day I woke up to the idea, but it's impossible to love yourself too much if it really is love. Because if it's real love, it's always going to be overflowing to others. Selfishness is not love. Therefore, you cannot love yourself too much. And this was a sort of a miraculous vision for me. And I then at that point decided that I needed to make myself my number one job. And that all of the failure, all of the attempts to try and change the world, and having failed in changing the world, and having failed in building my business, and even having failed in my marriage, all came down to that I had not prioritized myself. And so I would wake up each morning and I would look out the window and I would say, my number one job today is me, not my only job. I have other things to do for other people. I need to serve other people. There's all sorts of things I need to do. But I am my number one job every single day. In fact, I have it on a sign right in front of me here, in front of my computer. And most of my clients have one of these as well. It says, my number one job today is me. Because what happens is, as we take care of ourselves, as we, for example, nurture love inside of ourselves, nurture capacity, we are nurturing capacity to lead. We are nurturing capacity to influence. And so this was the turning point for me, was this sort of 18-month period of just making myself my number one job every single day. And that completely transformed my life. And the crazy thing is that I immediately discovered that I was having a bigger influence than I had previously. I wasn't changing techniques. I was still doing the same practices in the in what I did, but somehow I was having a bigger impact because I had made myself my number one job. And this was a big mindset change. And I always believe all transformation, all morphing, if I can use that, is a mindset change. It's not actually just adding a knowledge or adding some skill. And it's really taking time to invest in self that actually builds the capacity. And especially after having been so depleted, so run down, so much of a zombie, so burnt out, that I needed to build capacity. Um, and that capacity was me beginning to find my feet after failure.
Yeah, so in terms of your number one job being yourself, what were some of those steps that you took to make that your number one priority?
Mhm. Many different things. I did some online courses. I did a course with Brene Brown on just discovering self and learning that I'm enough and those sort of things. I started to develop a meditation practice. Well, initially it was actually more of a mindfulness practice. And in fact, I'll tell you a story about that. I in that very period, I was doing this practice at least once a day, and I was sitting in a sort of a courtyard coffee shop one day, and and I thought, okay, well, let me do this mindfulness practice that I'm learning and I'm trying to discover about myself and really tune in. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it the way that I've kind of been taught, which is start with what can I hear, and go through and list all the different things I can hear, and then what can I feel physically, and then what do I feel, inside of me. And so I start with this, what can I hear? And I start listening, oh, there's a dog barking, and oh, there I can hear some traffic. Oh, there's a truck, and here's some people talking over here, and somebody slammed a door over there, and all these little bits and pieces. And eventually, after I'd listed, I think 9 items, I suddenly realized that there was a generator that had been running the entire time just 10 meters away from me, but I'd blocked it out of my mind. And this is what we do. We block things out that become background noise, and bringing it and making it conscious was part of this awakening. So that was a simple mindfulness practice. And, then I would graduate on to, can I feel this? What can I feel in me? Oh, there's a breeze over here. There's the sun over here. And all these kind of physical things I can feel. And, oh, I can feel my muscles from the walk I took yesterday, and, various things, and you're tuning in. So these tuning in practices were a core element of me making myself my number one job. And it was the transition. Learning some breathing exercises. I think you've recently had Tim on your show. He teaches all about this, and I teach it often. In fact, I was working with some leaders in Europe today, and I just paused everything and I said, here's an interesting statement. The leaders bring the weather. So if you, for your team, had a fight with your partner in the morning, are you bringing that to your team? And so we did a very simple, got them to breathe in deeply 3 times and breathe out deeply 3 times. And I said to them, what happened? And they just said, I suddenly feel calm. And so these are the sort of practices of making myself my number one job. Learning mindfulness, learning meditation, changing mindsets, learning new perspectives on things. And every day I had these practices. Some cases it was stick a post-it note that says, I'm enough. Stick up another one that I did is I stuck a little post-it note up that said, what if nothing's wrong? And it's not to say there is nothing wrong, but it's asking the question, what if nothing is wrong? What would that do? How would that affect behavior? And so these were these investments I kept making in myself. And they truly were transformative. And they were things I'd never, ever done before in my life.
I love that exercise that you did about what can you hear. When I do training, I always ask my learners, my students, to close their eyes. I don't tell them why. And then I just say, close your eyes. And then I cough and I drop something and I scrumple some paper. And then when they open their eyes, I say, quickly write down what you heard. And most people will have 2 things that they've heard, maybe 3. And they didn't hear the car or the truck down the road, and they didn't hear the generator, and they didn't hear me cough. So it really is a very valuable exercise, that mindfulness, to really just be with yourself and your surroundings and tune everything out. I love that. Such an
And
important step.
totally agree with you, Lois. And I've done a similar exercise with training managers and leaders. And one of the ones, and I find this one hilarious, is around emotional intelligence. And I'm certified in a leadership emotional intelligence practice. And I ask these guys to just quickly write down and list all the emotions that they're feeling. And and the women have no trouble. They're got 8 or 10, and they're totally tuned in with themselves and all the rest of it. And the guys sort of go, "What do you mean all? Surely I'm only feeling one thing, And and I've even had it where somebody said to me, "But I only have 2 emotions, and one of them is hungry." Um, and then you say, but hang on, do you realize you can even have contrary emotions about the same thing at the same time? And they go, no, no, no. And then I start to explain it, and they go, you know, this is something I'm excited about, but at the same time, I'm scared about it. And it's all about the same thing at the same time. And this sort of lack of awareness of our own emotions is a deeper level I go after the listening exercise, where people can kind of tune in and go, wow, I am feeling more than one thing, and I didn't even realize.
And emotions, I mean, we can have a whole discussion just on emotions, because how many emotions are there? What is an emotion? How do you define emotions? Because everybody's got a different definition. I mean, Brené Brown's got a list of emotions that is very different to other people. Some people say there are only 8 emotions. It's a
Some people say
fascinating.
there are only 4. Yeah, it's fascinating, but there are nuances, and Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart is a great place if people want to find out more.
So investing in yourself, that is also, I like the term, I'm a lifelong learner. You never stop learning. It doesn't matter what you learn, just keep growing, opening your mind, improving the wisdom.
I totally agree with that. What I think really does happen, though, when we make ourselves our number one job is we become also lifelong learners about ourselves. You know, we all have a genius we can bring to the world, and most people are quite ignorant about their own genius. Um, a lot of people are very ignorant around, you know, what are not just what are our strengths, but what are our weaknesses, you know? Because for me, embracing and understanding where you are not strong is part of learning where you are strong and learning how you can partner with people for strength. So you can say, well, I bring this, you bring this, you strong where I'm weak, and that's how we can grow and raise efficacy so vastly over the norm of trying to be good at everything, which is just not true. So yeah, lifelong learner. I love adding knowledge. I love adding skill, but I want to learn more about me so that I can bring a better me to the world as well.
I like that. That's a very valuable tip as well. Collaborate. You're not good at everything. Find the strength in someone else and work with them. Partner, collaborate, whatever it might be. Outsource is the term everybody uses. You can't be bestest at everything.
Absolutely not. And in conscious leadership, we actually use the term genius. Discover your own genius and discover the genius in every single one of your people, and then learn how to bring all that together, that genius together.
I've got a speaker coming on soon. I think you know her, Janet Dupree. She's got a game that
Yes,
is absolutely fascinating, and there you can identify some of your strengths and weaknesses in
Janet and I collaborate a
in a
lot,
playful
and
manner.
I love that. Yeah, it's brilliant. What she's doing there is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So Janet and I have a lot in common, and we love talking about these things for hours.
So, any other steps that you can take in terms of leading yourself? What else can you do to overcome those failures, those mistakes?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it is around the things we need to do to change mindsets. And I've done, for example, some people call them affirmations. I'm not sure if I quite like that. I call them declarations of truth. You know,
I
when we
like that.
discover more of who we are, but then we realize we've got limiting beliefs about it. How do we overcome those limiting beliefs? And so, one of the things that I have as a practice as well is where I realize I have a limiting belief, but what the truth about me and what I believe about me are not the same. So I know cognitively what the truth is, but somehow there is something in my conditioning and the way I was raised that sort of stands against that and makes me hold myself back. And so I want to transform those sort of things. So I declare those truths over me. I don't, for example, suddenly say, you know, I'm brilliant at multitasking because I know I'm not and I never will be. So they're not affirmations of things that are not true. They are simply declarations of things that I do know are true, but somehow there is a conditioning that I'm trying to counter. And so we want to deal with those conditionings. You know, as we grow up from society, from parents, from teachers, from siblings, from advertising, from all these things, we get loaded with shoulds and oughts and all these sort of things. I found it very humorous one day. I was chatting to a psychologist, and he said, "Oh, you mean the musts?" And he says, "What we do is we keep practicing masturbation, and and it's we need to find the truth and actually do the things that are true to ourselves, and not just try and do whatever everybody else has put on us over our lives." And that is part of that growth, and finding our feet is discovering who we really are, what all those false beliefs are, or those messages that have limited us in some or other way, and finding practices to overcome them, whether that's again through meditation, through mindfulness, through declarations of truth, or whatever it might be.
You talk of conditioning. So, how do you overcome this? Growing up, my mother would always say to me, "You are so clever, you are so smart, you are so intelligent." And as a result, I never studied. So I never achieved, I never achieved what I could have achieved. So that conditioning, is that a truth? Is that a mindset? What is that?
Well, I think in your case, it absolutely was a truth. You are an intelligent woman, but here's where it gets really interesting. is what do we mean by that? Sir Ken Robinson, I actually managed to, before he passed away, managed to listen to him at a live seminar in London. And he does this little trick. He asks the audience, he says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intelligent are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how creative are you? And everybody comes up with a number. And some people will even say, oh, I'm a 10 out of 10 and this sort of thing. And then he says, you know what? It's the wrong question. It's not how intelligent are you? It's how are you intelligent?
Ah,
Because each person is uniquely intelligent. And I know for my IQ, I completely underperformed at school. But you know what? My niche of intelligence is not academics. My niche of intelligence is other areas. And I've learned over time to know how I am intelligent, not how intelligent am I. How I am creative. Everybody's creative, but we creative differently. So I understand. I'm not a sculptor. I don't have good fine motor. I can't even write in a way that I can read my own handwriting. But I'm creative. I create presentations and engagement and programs and products and all sorts of things. And so to me, it's yes, we sometimes have this conditioning that sort of goes, oh, well, I am or I'm not intelligent. I think it's the wrong place. I think what we really need to figure out is how are we intelligent? What is our niche in terms of that? And then go and apply that to the world. And maybe that's the conditioning change, the mindset change. Instead of how intelligent, how am I intelligent?
it goes back to the multiple intelligences. Maybe you're intelligent in gardening or in
Mhm.
music or in maths. We all
Exactly.
have different skills, different intelligences. Could be a
Yeah,
spiritual intelligence.
exactly.
So
Mhm.
find how, I like that, find how you are intelligent.
Yeah, very much.
Right. Any final thoughts or steps that you can advise people who facing some kind of failure where they're feeling down and out and they don't know what to do next?
There's a terrible saying, but a lot of my clients have been saying this to me lately, and they say, no one's coming to rescue me. And I know that sounds really harsh because we want to be rescued. We all have a desire for somebody to come in and say, well, here's a million, or here's a this, or here's an opportunity, or whatever. And for me, it's been the journey of discovering the resources inside through saying my number one job today is me, through saying that I need to build the capacity inside of me because nobody's going to do it for me, and taking that inner journey, um, and allowing that to become a priority, which is extremely difficult when you're burnt out or down or whatever. But it might be 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day of getting up and saying, I am my number one job. What is one thing I can do to nourish and create capacity inside of me right now? And do that and keep doing that and keep doing that. It's that practice, even if you've got all sorts of other priorities in the day, just putting that practice in place. I mean, preferably longer than 5 minutes, but if all you can manage is five, I promise you, it will shift everything again. And yeah, the answers we seek are inside of us.
And what about those entrepreneurs who have been at it for 3 years or 4 years and it's still not coming right? What do you say to them?
Well, again, I would look inside. I'm not saying that we don't need education or we don't need a mentor or something like that. But remember that even those sort of things is still feeding us on the inside. And so, ask, are we in the right niche? Are we in the right place? Do we know, are we bringing our genius to the world? Or are we trying to follow somebody else's shoulds or oughts of what an entrepreneur should be? So again, for me, the connection with self is the key in knowing what we can bring to the world. Now, we don't do this in such isolation where we forget that we also need to know what our clients need. We also need to know that what we have has got value to our clients. But for me, even asking those difficult client questions starts with me having addressed myself first and created the capacity to handle the tough information we might get from clients, the difficult messages we might get.
Right, there's a couple of comments in the chat. I like the number one job today is me. Absolutely agreed. I'm not quite sure to what statement that came up. Paying attention to our senses is a real awareness builder. Absolutely. And how are we intelligent? What a great question to ask. Thank you for sharing. Everything you need is already within you. So thank you so much, Ian. How can people get in touch with you?
The easiest is on LinkedIn. So it's simply LinkedIn/Ian Hatton, Ian Hatton, one word. You will find me there. And you'll find out more about my book. You'll find out more about
Yes, talk about your book.
various things. So yeah, so the book actually launches, well, it was for those who are on live, it launches in 2 days' time. And it's called Lead Like Morpheus, The Genius of Conscious Leadership. It's my first book. And it really does deal with the self-leadership and the leading others, both of those skills, and in a conscious way.
Can't wait. Launching on Friday. For those of you who get to hear this before Friday, do join live. What time is it on Friday?
It's midday South African time.
Midday South African. What platform?
On YouTube. We're actually doing a YouTube live, and people can find us there.
What is the name of your YouTube channel?
At Totally Morpheus.
At Totally Morpheus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll definitely be there, and I'm so looking forward to your book. Ian, we could talk for another 2 or 3 hours, I'm sure. You've got so much wisdom. You've got so much insight. It's incredibly valuable, and certainly you can help people find their feet before the failure happens. So thank you very, very much. I'll put all your detail and contact information below this video. And good luck with, no, good luck. That's not a good way to say it. Have fun with the launch of your book, and may it go well.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and do contact me if you need tips or you need I offer a free 30-minute discussion on the first steps you can take after you've had a failure, on the first steps that you can take. Go well, everybody.